You're doing everything right. At least, that's what you tell yourself. You've read the books, you've set the goals, you've created the plans. You know exactly what needs to be done to transform your life. And yet, you remain stuck, trapped in the same patterns, the same results, and the same frustrating cycle of ambition followed by inaction. What you don't realize is that there's an invisible forcer, hidden mental code that's been programmed into your subconscious mind, silently dictating your actions, sabotaging your efforts, and keeping you from the life you truly deserve. Napoleon Hill, after interviewing over 500 of the world's most successful individuals, discovered this code. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal it to Oolong with the exact method to reprogram it, permanently breaking the chains that have held you captive for far too long. This isn't just another motivational message. This is the master key to unlocking your true potential, the same key that transformed ordinary people into legends of success and achievement. Your mind has been hijacked, and you don't even know it. Every day, you wake up believing you're in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your destiny. But beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, there's a sophisticated operating system running the show, an invisible prison constructed from years of mental programming, limiting beliefs, and subconscious patterns. Napoleon Hill called this the mental code, the hidden algorithm that determines whether you'll take action or remain paralyzed, whether you'll push through obstacles or surrender at the first sign of resistance, whether you'll rise to greatness or settle for mediocrity. This code wasn't installed by accident. It was programmed systematically throughout your life by well-meaning parents who wanted to protect you from failure, by teachers who rewarded conformity over creativity, by a society that conditions you to fear standing out from the crowd. The most dangerous prison is the one where the inmates don't realize they're imprisoned. You can't escape what you don't acknowledge exists. That's why the vast majority of people live their entire lives trapped within invisible walls of their own making, never understanding why their dreams remain forever out of reach, always blaming external circumstances rather than looking within. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before successfully inventing the electric light bulb. If he had been operating under the same mental code that governs most people today, he would have quit after the first dozen attempts. What separated him wasn't superior intelligence or resources, it was a different mental code that interpreted failure not as a signal to stop, but as a necessary step on the path to discovery. What if everything you've been told about success is wrong? What if the very mental patterns you believe are helping you are actually the chains holding you down? What if the difference between your current life and the life you desire isn't about working harder, but about reprogramming the hidden code that's been sabotaging your efforts all along? Today, you stand at a crucial crossroads. You can continue operating under the same mental programming that has produced your current results, or you can make the decision to rewrite the code, to break free from the invisible prison, and to finally claim the life that has always been your birthright. Which path will you choose? Your mental code wasn't written yesterday. It's been developing since the moment you took your first breath. Every experience, every word spoken to you, every triumph, and especially every failure, has contributed to the complex algorithm now running silently in the background of your mind. Napoleon Hill discovered something remarkable during his 25 years studying the world's most successful individuals. He found that the difference between achievement and mediocrity wasn't circumstantial, it was mental. The titans of industry he interviewed, Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, weren't operating with the same mental code as the average person. They had either been programmed differently from the start or had consciously reprogrammed themselves along the way. Think about the messages that shaped your early understanding of possibility. Were you told you can be anything you want to be, or be realistic? Were you encouraged to take risks, or to play it safe? Was failure treated as a learning opportunity, or as something to be avoided at all costs? These messages weren't just passing comments, they were lines of code being written into your mental operating system. Consider Henry Ford. Before he revolutionized manufacturing with the assembly line, he was told repeatedly that his ideas were impossible. His mental code could have easily been programmed to accept these limitations as truth. Instead, he famously responded to the naysayers. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. He understood that the mental code is everything. Every time you've faced a challenge and retreated, your mental code has been reinforced. Every time you've settled for less than what you desire, the programming has deepened. Every excuse you've accepted has strengthened the walls of your invisible prison. The longest-standing patterns are the hardest to recognize because they feel like truth rather than programming. What limiting beliefs have become so familiar that you no longer question them? What excuses have you repeated so often that they now seem like immutable facts of your life? What fears have become so comfortable that you've built your identity around avoiding them rather than confronting them? The first step in breaking the chains is recognizing that they exist and understanding how they were forged. Your current results aren't random, they're the perfect output of your current mental programming. If you want different results, you must have the courage to examine and rewrite the code that's producing them. Are you ready to see your chains for what they really are? Hidden within your mental code is a sophisticated self-sabotage algorithm, a series of automatic responses designed to keep you exactly where you are. This algorithm activates precisely when you're on the verge of breakthrough, pulling you back from the edge of transformation with remarkable efficiency. Napoleon Hill identified this phenomenon as the primary reason why so many people with immense potential never realize their dreams. He observed that this self-sabotage algorithm operates through predictable patterns that, once recognized, can be disrupted and reprogrammed. The first pattern is what Hill called the comfort magnet. Just as you're about to step into new territory, whether it's approaching someone influential, starting a business, or committing to a challenging goal, the algorithm activates, magnetically pulling you back toward the familiar. It whispers convincing reasons why now isn't the right time, or why you should do more research first. The comfort magnet isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. The second pattern is the failure forecast. Your mind begins projecting worst-case scenarios with such vivid intensity that they feel like memories rather than imagined possibilities. This isn't cautious planning, it's the self-sabotage algorithm working to paralyze you with fear of outcomes that haven't happened and likely never will. The third pattern is the worthiness calculation. As you stand at the threshold of opportunity, the algorithm quickly computes all the reasons you don't deserve success. It compiles an exhaustive list of your past mistakes, current limitations, and perceived inadequacies, presenting them as evidence that you should retreat to safer ground. E. W. Barnes, one of the most successful associates of Thomas Edison, encountered all three patterns when he decided to work with the famous inventor. There was no obvious path to meet Edison, no job posting, no formal application process. The comfort magnet pulled strongly, suggesting he find a more accessible opportunity. The failure forecast predicted humiliation if he approached such a prominent figure. The worthiness calculation reminded him he lacked the credentials to work with someone of Edison's stature. But Barnes recognized these as algorithmic outputs rather than truth. He disrupted the pattern, showed up at Edison's laboratory, and announced his partnership with the inventor before it existed. His persistence eventually made the declaration reality. The most dangerous aspect of the self-sabotage algorithm is that it disguises itself as wisdom. It feels like you're making smart, rational decisions when you're actually running ancient programming designed to maintain the status quo. Every time you defer action, your neural pathways strengthen, making the algorithm more efficient and harder to override the next time opportunity presents itself. What opportunity stands before you right now that your self-sabotage algorithm is working overtime to pull you away from? What dream has been deferred so many times that you've almost convinced yourself you don't really want it? The moment you recognize the algorithm at work is the moment you gain the power to interrupt its execution. Will you continue to let it run unchallenged, or will you assert your authority over your own mental code? What you focus on expands. This isn't just a motivational platitude, it's a fundamental principle of how your mental code operates. Napoleon Hill discovered that the most successful people he studied had mastered the art of directing their mental focus with laser precision, effectively programming their subconscious minds to seek out and create the circumstances necessary for achievement. Your reticular activating system, the filtering mechanism in your brain's constantly scanning your environment for information that aligns with your dominant thoughts. When you focus persistently on obstacles, problems, and limitations, your mental code directs this system to find evidence that reinforces these perspectives. The result, a self-fulfilling prophecy of frustration and stagnation. Conversely, when you discipline your mind to focus on opportunities, solutions, and possibilities, you literally begin to see things that were always present but previously invisible to you. This isn't magical thinking, it's the practical application of neurological principles to reconfigure your mental code. Andrew Carnegie, one of Hill's most influential mentors, started with nothing, no money, no education, no advantages. What he possessed was an unwavering focus on what he wanted to create, rather than on what he lacked. While others, in similar circumstances, were consumed by thoughts of scarcity and limitation, Carnegie trained his mind to see opportunity where others saw only obstacles. This difference in mental focus, this critical line of code, separated him from his peers, and ultimately led to him becoming the wealthiest man in America. Most people's mental focus operates on a default setting, reactively bouncing from one worry to another, constantly scanning for threats rather than opportunities. This default programming served our ancestors well when physical survival was the primary concern. But in today's world, where your challenges are more psychological than physical, this ancient code is outdated and counterproductive. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your mental focus. If your thoughts are dominated by what you don't want, what you fear might happen, or what you believe you can't achieve, these thought patterns become instructions to your subconscious mind. Like a heat-seeking missile, your mind then finds or creates circumstances that match these thoughts. What are you currently programming into your mental code through your habitual focus? Are you consciously directing your thoughts toward desired outcomes, or are you allowing your mind to default to worry, doubt, and limitation? The power to redirect your focus to rewrite this critical section of your mental code is always available to you. The question is, will you exercise this power, or continue to let your attention be controlled by default programming? Today, make a conscious decision about where you'll place your mental focus. Because whatever you consistently focus on is exactly what you're programming yourself to create and experience. Choose wisely. There is a single moment that separates those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream about it. Napoleon Hill identified this pivotal moment as the decision, not a wish, not a hope, not a vague intention, but a definite decision from which there is no retreat. This decision is the line of code that, once written, overrides all conflicting programming in your mental operating system. Most people never experience true transformation because they never reach this critical decision point. They exist in a perpetual state of maybe. Maybe they'll start tomorrow. Maybe they'll commit when circumstances are better. Maybe they'll take action when they feel more confident. But maybe is just another word for no stretched over time. It's mental quicksand that creates the illusion of forward movement while ensuring you remain stuck. A genuine decision cuts off all possibilities except the path to your desired outcome. The Latin root of the word decision literally means to cut off. When you truly decide, you cut off the possibility of failure. You cut off the option of retreat. You cut off all excuses and justifications for anything less than total success. William Wrigley Jr., whom Hill studied closely, decided he would build a chewing gum empire at a time when the product was barely known. He didn't hope it would work out. He didn't try to see if it was possible. He decided it would happen and then worked backward from that certainty, allowing his mental code to compute only the paths to success rather than wasting energy calculating the probability of failure. This level of decision is rare because it's uncomfortable. It requires complete responsibility. When you truly decide, you can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck if you don't achieve your aim. A real decision means there are no acceptable alternatives, only the result you've committed to creating. The moment of decision is the moment when the mental code shifts from "is this possible?" to "how will I make this happen?" It's the difference between "I'll try" and "I will," between dabbling and dominance. Your brain is literally reprogrammed in that instant, filtering information differently, identifying resources previously overlooked, and generating solutions rather than excuses. What have you been contemplating but not truly deciding? What goal have you been approaching tentatively, leaving yourself an escape route if things get difficult? What dream have you been treating as optional when deep down you know it's essential to your fulfillment? The decision that changes everything is waiting for you to make it, not tomorrow. Not when you have more information. Not when you feel ready. Now, this moment. Because until you decide with absolute conviction, your mental code will continue executing its default programming of hesitation, doubt, and half measures. The decision is yours. What will it be? You were never meant to achieve greatness alone. One of Napoleon Hill's most profound discoveries was what he called the mastermind principle. The exponential power created when two or more minds unite in harmony toward a common purpose. This principle isn't just a nice-to-have strategy. It's a fundamental line of code essential for extraordinary achievement. Your mental programming has likely been influenced by the American mythology of the self-made individual, the lone genius who, through sheer force of will, conquers all obstacles to achieve success. This narrative is not only false, it's actively harmful to your progress. No great achievement in history has ever been the product of a single mind working in isolation. Henry Ford, despite being celebrated as a singular visionary, readily admitted that his success depended entirely on assembling a team whose combined intelligence far exceeded his own. He recognized that his mental code alone had limitations that could only be overcome. By connecting it with complementary minds focused on the same objective, the mastermind creates an invisible third mind, collective intelligence that transcends the capabilities of any individual participant. When you deliberately connect your mental energy with others of like passion and diverse skills, you create a force field of creativity, insight, and problem-solving capacity that simply doesn't exist in isolation. Most people underperform not because they lack ability, but because their mental code is running on the limited processing power of a single mind. They try to overcome challenges using only their own perspective, experience, and knowledge, like trying to power a city with a single generator when an entire power grid is available. The quality of your mastermind determines the upper limit of your achievement. If your current social and professional circles consist of people who reinforce limited thinking, who are satisfied with mediocrity, or who discourage ambitious goals, your mental code is being continuously downgraded by these associations. Conversely, when you deliberately seek out and connect with individuals who think bigger, who challenge your assumptions, and who expect excellence, your mental programming receives constant upgrades. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? What is their combined effect on your mental code? Are they expanding your sense of what's possible or reinforcing your limitations? Are they challenging you toward greatness or enabling your comfort with the status quo? The mastermind isn't just about finding any group of people, it's about creating or joining a coalition of minds, specifically united around your most important objectives. It's about deliberately programming your environment with the mental codes of others who will elevate rather than diminish your vision. Today, make a commitment to audit your associations and to intentionally create a mastermind that will amplify your mental power rather than drain it. Your potential has always been greater than you've imagined, but it will remain dormant until you connect your mind with others who will help you activate it fully. Who will you choose to include in your mastermind? Knowledge without action is merely potential. Napoleon Hill observed that the mental code of every successful person he studied contained what could be called a persistent action protocol, an unwavering commitment to taking consistent action regardless of temporary failure, external circumstances, or emotional fluctuations. The vast majority of people operate with a fundamentally flawed line of code in their mental programming. They believe action should follow feeling. They wait to feel motivated, confident, or certain before they move forward. This creates a fatal error in their achievement algorithm because feelings are the most unreliable foundation for consistent action. The truth that Hill discovered is precisely the opposite of conventional wisdom. Feelings follow action. When you act consistently despite not feeling ready, your emotions eventually align with your behavior. This is the code that separates achievers from dreamers. The understanding that action comes first, favorable feelings second. Consider the story of Colonel Sanders, who was rejected 1,009 times before someone accepted his chicken recipe. His mental code didn't require emotional comfort to continue taking action. He had programmed himself to persist, regardless of temporary results or feelings of discouragement. If he had waited until rejection no longer stung before making his next attempt, Kentucky Fried Chicken would never have existed. Most people's action protocol contains hidden contingencies and visible if statements that create escape routes from commitment. I'll make those calls if I feel confident. I'll start my business if the economy improves. I'll pursue my dream if I can guarantee it will succeed. These contingencies ensure that consistent action never materializes, because the conditions for action are rarely, if ever, perfectly met. The persistent action protocol that Hill identified has no such contingencies. It operates on a simple, uncompromising principle. I will take action toward my definite chief aim every single day, regardless of all other variables. Period. No exceptions. No excuses. This protocol isn't about working harder, it's about working with absolute consistency. It's the understanding that small actions, taken persistently, have exponentially greater impact than occasional bursts of massive effort, followed by extended inactivity. The compound effect of daily, consistent action, even when that action seems insignificant in isolation, is the most powerful force for achievement ever discovered. What would happen if you adopted this persistent action protocol starting today? What if, instead of waiting for perfect conditions or positive feelings, you committed to taking at least one significant action toward your most important goal every single day for the next year? How different would your results be 12 months from now? The installation of this protocol into your mental code doesn't require extraordinary willpower or dramatic changes. It requires only the decision to value consistency over intensity, to prioritize small steps taken every day over occasional heroic efforts. Will you make that decision? Will you upgrade your mental programming with this essential line of code today? Failure is never a terminal event in the mental code of achievers. It's merely a necessary subroutine in the larger algorithm of success. Napoleon Hill's research revealed that the world's most accomplished individuals had installed what could be called a failure reframing system in their mental programming, an automatic process that transforms setbacks from stopping points into stepping stones. The average person's mental code contains a critical error. It interprets failure as evidence of personal inadequacy and as a signal to retreat. This programming creates a deadly feedback loop, where each setback reinforces the belief that success is impossible, further decreasing the likelihood of continued effort, guaranteeing more failure, and perpetuating the cycle indefinitely. The failure reframing system that Hill discovered works entirely differently. It automatically processes setbacks through a series of empowering questions. What can I learn from this? How does this failure bring me closer to success? What would I do differently next time? This system treats failure not as a verdict, but as valuable, data-essential information that makes success more likely with each subsequent attempt. Thomas Edison embodied this mental programming perhaps more than any other figure Hill studied. When asked how it felt to fail 10,000 times in his attempt to create the electric light bulb, Edison replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." This wasn't mere positive thinking, it was the operation of a sophisticated failure reframing system that prevented temporary setbacks from terminating his progress. Most people experience failure as primarily emotional rather than informational. Their mental code triggers feelings of shame, embarrassment, and inadequacy when results don't meet expectations. These emotions cloud judgment, restrict creativity, and inhibit the very learning that would lead to eventual success. The failure reframing system operates on a fundamentally different principle. It separates the event, a specific outcome that didn't meet expectations, from the interpretation what the outcome means about you and your future prospects. This separation allows for objective analysis rather than emotional reaction, maintaining momentum through even the most challenging phases of achievement. R.H. Macy failed in 7 different businesses before finally succeeding with his department store. What distinguished him wasn't an absence of failure, but a mental code that processed failure differently from his contemporaries. While others interpreted repeated setbacks as evidence they should pursue something else, Macy's failure reframing system extracted lessons from each venture that made the next attempt more likely to succeed. How do you currently respond to setbacks? Does your mental programming automatically generate reasons to quit? Or does it immediately begin searching for the lesson that will improve your next attempt? Do you perceive failure as a judgment on your worth and potential, or as a necessary and valuable part of your development process? The quality of your failure reframing system will determine the upper limit of your achievement more than almost any other aspect of your mental code. Those who can transform failure from a reason to retreat into a catalyst for growth will inevitably surpass those of equal or even superior talent who lack this critical programming. Will you upgrade your failure response system today? Casual wants produce casual results. Napoleon Hill discovered that every extraordinary achiever possessed what could be called a desire amplification circuit, a mental mechanism that transformed ordinary wishes into burning, obsessive desires that drove relentless action. The average person's mental code contains a significant limitation. Desires exist as vague preferences rather than commanding necessities. When desire exists at this low amplitude, it's easily overridden by temporary discomfort, immediate gratification impulses, or the path of least resistance. The result is a life of unfulfilled potential and abandoned dreams. The desire amplification circuit that Hill identified in the most successful individuals operates on an entirely different scale. It doesn't merely prefer a particular outcome, it demands it with such intensity that all competing priorities are subordinated to its achievement. This isn't about wanting something a lot. It's about wanting something with such consuming focus that failure becomes literally unacceptable to your mental operating system. Andrew Carnegie didn't casually want to succeed in the steel industry. He became obsessed with the vision of creating the most efficient, profitable steel operation in existence. This amplified desire fueled 16-hour workdays, drove him to learn every aspect of the business, and compelled him to persist through obstacles that would have deterred anyone with merely moderate interest in the outcome. Most people unknowingly sabotage their achievement by dividing their desired energy among too many targets, never allowing any single aim to reach the critical threshold necessary for extraordinary results. Their mental code is programmed to chase whatever seems most appealing in the moment, rather than concentrating focused energy on their highest value objective. The desire amplification circuit works by connecting your goal to your deepest values and most profound emotional drivers. It transforms achievement from something you merely want to experience into something you must create as an expression of who you truly are. This isn't about external pressure or should. It's about aligning your desired outcome so completely with your identity that pursuing it becomes as natural and necessary as breathing. Edwin C. Barnes didn't just want to work with Thomas Edison, he made it his definite chief aim, with such intensity that he was willing to travel on a freight train with no money to present himself at Edison's laboratory, declaring he was there to become the inventor's business partner. Edison recalled years later that something in Barnes' manner convinced him this was no ordinary desire, but a command to the universe that would not be denied. Barnes' amplified desire eventually made him one of Edison's most valuable associates, and a wealthy man in his own right. What is your relationship with desire? Have you been taught to suppress your ambition, to want things moderately, to be satisfied with what you have? What if this mental programming isn't wisdom, but a prison limiting what you'll allow yourself to create? What if you gave yourself permission to want something with unreasonable, uncomfortable intensity? The desire amplification circuit is activated through focused visualization, emotional engagement with your outcome, and ruthless elimination of competing priorities. It's the understanding that extraordinary achievement requires extraordinary desire, as a temporary emotional state, but as a persistent, dominant thought that subordinates all else to its fulfillment. Are you ready to amplify your desire beyond conventional boundaries? Who you believe you are determines what you can achieve. Napoleon Hill's most profound insight may have been what we could call the identity evolution protocol, the understanding that lasting success requires becoming a different person, not just doing different things. The conventional approach to achievement focuses almost exclusively on behavior change, taking specific actions that will theoretically produce desired outcomes. But this approach contains a fatal flaw. When actions conflict with identity, identity always wins. Your mental code will not allow you to consistently perform behaviors that contradict who you fundamentally believe yourself to be. The Identity Evolution Protocol operates on a much deeper level of mental programming. Instead of merely attempting to change what you do, it focuses on systematically upgrading who you are, your self-concept, your beliefs about what's possible for someone like you, your fundamental assumptions about your capabilities and worthiness. Henry Ford began his career as a simple machinist, but he didn't allow his identity to remain confined by his initial station in life. He consciously evolved his self-concept from employee to innovator, to industrialist, to world changer. Each evolution of identity expanded what he believed was possible and appropriate for him to pursue. The actions that created the Ford Motor Company weren't available to him as a machinist, they only became accessible when his identity evolved to encompass larger possibilities. Most people's attempts at achievement fail because they try to produce results that are incompatible with their current identity. They want the income of an entrepreneur while maintaining the identity of an employee. They want the body of an athlete while maintaining the identity of someone for whom fitness is an occasional priority rather than a core value. They want the impact of a leader while maintaining the identity of someone who avoids risk and visibility. The Identity Evolution Protocol, recognized by Hill, involves consciously designing your future self and then systematically becoming that person through daily thought management, environmental design, and strategic association. It's the understanding that the person you are today simply cannot produce the results you desire. You must become someone new to access new outcomes. Napoleon Hill himself underwent this transformation. He began his research as an obscure reporter given an assignment to interview successful people. By the time he completed his work 25 years later, he had evolved his identity into that of a philosopher, an advisor to the powerful, and ultimately a teacher whose ideas would impact millions. This evolution wasn't accidental, it was the result of intentional identity redesign. What identity are you currently operating from? What unexamined beliefs about who you are and what people like you can achieve are limiting the results available to you? What would you attempt if you genuinely believed you were the kind of person for whom extraordinary achievement was normal and expected? The Identity Evolution Protocol isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about consciously becoming the next, most expanded version of who you already are. It's about systematically identifying and eliminating the artificial limitations in your self-concept that are no longer serving your growth. Today, make the decision to begin this evolution. Choose one aspect of your identity that's currently constraining your potential, and consciously design its upgraded replacement. Then begin living from this new self-concept immediately, not waiting for external circumstances to catch up with your internal transformation. Will you remain who you've always been, or will you become who you're truly capable of being? You've reached the moment of truth. Everything you've just learned about the hidden mental code that governs your results isn't merely interesting information. It's a direct challenge to take control of your mental programming and, by extension, your destiny. Napoleon Hill's discoveries weren't meant to be passively appreciated, but actively applied. The invisible prison that has contained your potential isn't made of external circumstances. It's constructed from lines of mental code that were installed without your conscious participation programming that has been running your life while creating the illusion that you're in control. But now you know. The veil has been lifted. You've been shown the matrix of your mind, and with that awareness comes both power and responsibility. Every great achievement in human history began with a decisive moment, when someone chose to reject their default programming and write new code for themselves. Henry Ford rejected the programming that said automobiles were luxury items for the wealthy and wrote new code that made them accessible to the masses. Thomas Edison rejected the programming that said artificial light was impossible and wrote new code that illuminated the world. Helen Keller rejected the programming that said her disabilities defined her limits and wrote new code that transformed her into an author, activist, and inspiration. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue running the same mental software that has produced your current results? Or will you exercise your power as the programmer of your own mind? The choice confronts you now, demanding a response that cannot be deferred. Understand this clearly. Knowledge without application has no power to change your life. Millions have learned these principles. Few have applied them with the persistence necessary to transform their circumstances. The difference isn't in what they knew, but in what they did with what they knew. Information becomes transformation only through implementation. Napoleon Hill himself said it best: knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when, and if, it is organized into definite plans of action. The mental code you've been operating with has created your present reality with mathematical precision. If you want a different reality, you must install different code, not for a day or a week, but as your new operating system. This is your moment of decision. Not a weak, wavering "I'll try," but a powerful, absolute "I will." Will you continue to live at the mercy of programming you didn't choose? Or will you take control of your mental code starting today? Will you remain as you are, or will you evolve into the person capable of creating the life you truly desire? The hidden mental code is no longer hidden from you. You've been given the key to your own transformation. What you do with it now will determine everything that follows. Choose wisely. Choose now. The life you were meant to live is waiting on the other side of that choice.